folks, this is Debora Accomando, and welcome to Interview Boss, career hacking for PAs, where our philosophy is be your own boss, no matter who you work for. You know what? Love that little tagline. I think it really captures what this podcast is all about, right? It's about a mindset that says, I see behind the curtain. I define my own destiny. I create my own luck. I do what it takes. I decide. I think there's a lot of excitement and hope around that mindset, especially after the pandemic and all the intense stress healthcare providers have endured over the past few years. And if that's you, if that speaks to you, you're in the right place. Welcome to the tribe. So this is our second podcast, and I wanted to welcome back all the PAs that watched episode number 1, entitled simply Belief. If you didn't catch the first episode, you might want to go back and check it out because I think it serves as a great foundation for everything that we're going to be talking about throughout this podcast series. In the first episode, I gave you a little insight into my own story, how I got from being a young behavioral health specialist helping young kids overcome severe anxiety disorders to being a healthcare recruiter in a busy Manhattan staffing agency, and how something as insignificant as a personality test changed my perception of what I was capable of, and in turn, it changed my belief about what was possible in my own life. Belief is the foundation of every dream that comes true. I can't think of a single thing I've ever accomplished in my life that didn't begin with the belief that good things would happen. And the reason is simple. Belief is the gateway to our most powerful asset, our imagination. So let's continue with my story a little bit and give you a better sense of how I got here and where I hope to take you guys with this podcast. So after I get hired by the big recruiting firm in Manhattan, things, started out well enough. I get paired up with a very experienced healthcare recruiter who's, about my age. And, when I first met her, I thought, wow, great. She's my age. She seems nice. She seems smart. She's experienced. And I had no clue what I was doing. So I was like, hey, maybe this could be, fun. Maybe we'll, actually, wind up being friends too. And so I meet her during the initial interview, but she didn't really say that much. So the first time we talked, was really on my first day of work. And, I guess we didn't talk that much that day either. I mean, at least I didn't. It was mostly, going through the basics of orientation and how things worked, standard new job type of stuff. So if you don't know anything about how a staffing agency works, basically there are 2 types of recruiters: the folks that handle the employer side of the business and those that handle the candidate side of the business. The 2 work as a team to fill open positions for their clients. And the candidate recruiter spends most of their time talking to candidates, and the client recruiter spends most of their time with the employer's HR folks and hiring managers. And that's an oversimplification, but I think you get the gist. So new recruiters like me at the time almost always start on the candidate side, finding and managing candidates for the client's open jobs. And that means, talking to candidates about the job, helping them prepare for interviews, handling the interview logistics, like, where to be and what time, and getting feedback on the candidate's interest levels, whether they're interested in continuing the interview process and ultimately accepting a job offer with one of our clients. And so I remember one morning, like a couple of weeks in after starting, she asks me about the status of one of my candidates that we had in a final interview stage with one of her clients. And not having spoken to the candidate in a few days, I take a bite of my lunch and I casually I have no idea. And out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that all the other recruiters around me sort of stop what they're doing. And now they're looking at me out of the corners of their eyes in horror, like I was going to get hit by a bus I didn't see coming. What do you mean you have no idea? She screams. And I remember she slams her telephone headset on the desk, and I'm almost jump out of my chair. And I look up from the deli sandwich I've got stuffed in my mouth, and all I remember is all right, should I finish chewing, or should I just start dialing the phone and hoping I could choke the food down before, my candidate answers this frantic call? And so, while I'm searching desperately to find the number under papers and sandwich wrappers, she continues to verbally rip me apart for being clueless. And I'll never forget this line: jeopardizing her livelihood. Now, keep in mind, this happens in front of a room full of 40 other recruiters and the partners who just hired me. And I hadn't been on the job for more than a couple of weeks. That was a bad day. So, whatever burgeoning career confidence I had as an executive recruiter was officially on life support. And I thought, perfect. My last boss is a narcissist and this one's a psycho. And I'm the idiot for thinking this recruiting thing was a good idea. And so I remember sitting on the train on the ride home, my face is, pressed up against the glass and the trees and buildings are whizzing by. And I'm thinking what am I going to do now? I just left my career as a behavioral health practitioner to get into executive recruiting. And now all I want to do is crawl under a rock and die. And so I get home, my husband takes one look at me and he's like, oh no, what happened? And I just start bawling. She's an absolute bitch. I hate her. I'm not going back. I'm not going back again. And so I'm sobbing and I'm this is incoherent rant at this point. And he's like, who's a bitch? What are you talking about? And so I tell him the whole story. Every last humiliating detail. And he's like, that's it? And I freeze. And I look at him. I got tears running down my face. My chin's all wet, makeup everywhere. And I'm like, what do you mean? Is that it? Yeah, that's it? What else do you want to hear? That they rubbed dog poop in my hair or put a sign on my back that said, you suck? Yeah, that's it. And so he's like, well, what did you imagine would happen? Now, guys, I was about ready to punch him in the face at this point. And so I scream not that. And so now he's aware, we're about to go toe to toe. I'm going to tear his head off. And so he takes a deep breath. He stands up. And before he walks out of the room, he's like, well, you should try to imagine the hard times too. And so I sat there, my face is all wet, my nose is running, makeup everywhere. And I realized, damn it, I hate it when he's right. Did I think they were just going to hand me all this money, free time, serve me bonbons on a silver platter the whole time? Of course not. That's not realistic. Yet I never allowed myself to really imagine the price I'd have to pay to achieve success in this new endeavor. And I thought about it. I really didn't imagine anything. I just sort of hope things would turn out okay. But the reality is nothing worth doing, whatever it is that you're aiming for, especially if it's amazing, comes without pain and hardship. There's always a price to pay. And as I thought about it more and more, it's the price we pay for the things we want that make the success we achieve worth the effort. And as it turns out, the struggle is good. So as I start this podcast, I realize that except for maybe some friends and family and a few people who somehow stumbled upon this, no one's watching yet, right? And most likely no one's going to be watching for a while. And I'm okay with that. It's what I imagine is going to happen. It's just part of the price, along with the hard work, the expenses. And let's not forget about the folks that think I suck and are all, happy to tell me about it. So, hey guys, I welcome your feedback too. If you're right, I need to get better. And if you're wrong, it doesn't matter. So you're only helping. So thanks in advance. I also imagine that my efforts will eventually succeed, not beyond my wildest dreams, but within them. People will watch and subscribe. People are going to love it. And the content we'll provide will be awesome and valuable. And it's going to change people's lives for the better. And more importantly, I'm going to have a ton of fun doing it. And I'm going to meet countless fascinating people along this journey. Yeah, and I'll also get my butt kicked along the way as well, right? And when that happens, I imagine myself handling it with grace and resilience. That's what I imagine. And if you're wondering, my boss and I, we worked it out. We actually became really successful together in that busy recruiting firm in Manhattan. And we had a ton of fun. 20 years later, we're still the closest of friends. And I absolutely love her. And one day, I'm going to have her on this show so you guys can meet her too. That's going to be a fun episode for sure. So with that, I want to turn to the 8 broad topics that we're going to cover in this podcast that will help you imagine what's possible in your life. First, we're going to talk about money. This topic is about maximizing income as a healthcare professional. Guests are going to discuss creative ways our listeners could use their education and experience to make substantially more money than they currently earn. The series is called Add a Zero. Next, we're going to cover impact. This topic is about maximizing personal impact as a healthcare professional. Guests will discuss creative ways our listeners could build solid leadership foundation and rise to increasingly impactful roles for themselves and their organizations. That series, Vision Quest. Next, we'll cover freedom. This topic is all about living a dream life as a healthcare professional. Guests will discover creative ways our listeners could, relocate to exotic places while leveraging their education and experience to earn a living. That series is called Cake and Eat It. I love that one. All right, so next we're going to cover change and transition. This topic explores various clinical and non-clinical roles available to healthcare professionals. Guests will discuss life in those multiple roles and creative and concrete ways to transition into those roles. That series, What Not to Do in Your First PA Job. And we're going to start with this series right away for our PA students transitioning from academic to professional life to help them get started on the right foot. Sound okay? All right, great. Next, social good. This topic explores how to use clinical experience and education for social good beyond patient care. Guests will discuss ways to positively impact humanity, what that looks like, and concrete ways to transition into such roles. That series is called For the Love of Pete. This one I'm really excited about too, right? Because although I love all of our topics, there's just something about making a positive impact that I think drives a lot of healthcare professionals, and making an impact beyond simply providing patient care will hopefully resonate with you guys. We'll be talking to some amazing guests to talk about what's possible. All right, next we're going to cover innovation. This topic explores state-of-the-art in medicine and patient care. Guests will discuss the latest breakthroughs in medicine, the roles available for healthcare professionals in those spaces, and ways to break in. That series will be called On the Edge. Next, we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. This topic is all about exploring entrepreneurial opportunities for healthcare professionals. Guests will discuss business opportunities for healthcare professionals and concrete ways they could get started. This series is called If You Build It. So many PAs and other healthcare professionals I know are seriously considering either, starting their own business or consulting practice, especially now with the stress and burnout so many are experiencing post-COVID. I mean, the Great Resignation is absolute proof of just how widespread this feeling is right now. And I really hope you get a ton of value from this topic. Finally, we want to keep it fun and light too, so we're going to cover beauty and fashion. This topic will explore beauty and fashion for the busy healthcare professional. Guests are going to discuss what healthcare professionals can do to look and feel great during interviews, at work, at networking events, etc. That series is going to be called That's Hot. So that should be a lot of fun. And as you hear from our amazing guests in the days and weeks to come, I truly hope that you're inspired to believe that you could do more as your life, with your life as a PA. That being a PA isn't a limiting description of who you are, but rather an amazing foundation for so many other fabulous paths that you could take in your life. So until next time, dream big and have faith. The universe always makes room for those who believe. And remember, be your own boss, no matter who you work for.